Reggae Just Extra with Ras Dennis.
There is no doubt that Bob Marley got a good part of his charisma from his late mother, Cedella Booker. Cheerful, outspoken, but always polite, Cedella Booker epitomized the rural Jamaican woman, strong-willed, hardy, and fiercely protective of her child. In her case, that child was a son who would grow to be the first superstar of the Caribbean. This is the story of Cedella Marley Booker with Ras Dennis. Cedella Marley Booker's life began on July 23 in 1926 with her birth in the mountainous bosom of Jamaica, in the district of 9 Miles, the parish of St. and to family of 9. 5 boys and 4 girls, Enid, Ivy, Jonathan, David, Solomon, Cedella, Amy, Surgeon, and Gibson. Her mother was Albertha Wilby, and her father was a man of many names. His given name was Omiria Malcolm, a strict, godly, kindly man of a medium build and dark complexion. He was looked up to by the people in the community, most of whom used to call him Custos, a term of respect used by Jamaicans. Her paternal grandfather was Robert Uncle Day Malcolm, who descended from the Coromantee, or Akan, slaves shipped to Jamaica from the Gold Coast, today known as Ghana, in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. At 10, Cedella lost her mother, and years later, her father would marry a woman named Lurleen Brown from Lucky Hill in the parish of St. Mary. Cedella was still attending school, but not happily. According to her, school was miles away down the country road, and even though she was a playful child who used to skip and run the whole way, it still took an hour or two to reach. In those days, there was no bus, and the only transportation throughout the country parts of the island was what Jamaicans jokingly call footmobile, meaning you walked. Just like every other child, Cedella just didn't like school. She didn't like being cooped up for hours under the rule of a sour-faced teacher. However, she said that if her mother had been alive, she would have made her continue in school, unlike her father, who was a sympathetic and often permitted her to stay at home if she cried that she didn't want to go to school. From that moment on, her hated schooling was over forever, and her daylight hours would be spent mainly in the fields beside her father. Every day after that, Cedella would follow her father to a place known as Smith, which was about 3 miles away up the mountain slope, and helped cultivate his land. Her father always had men laboring in the fields of Smith, scattered around the hillside digging yam holes, clearing land for planting, or cutting bush for manure. It was in her daily trek to Smith that she began to take notice of a white man on a horse. In their district, a white man was a rare thing that drew the eye. This one was an older man, then somewhere around 50, and she used to see him daily riding his horse up and down the commons, hills, and dirt roads. People said he lived up in the settlement of Brissett, that he was an army officer in charge of parceling out the government lands of a place called John Williams to old soldiers. Everyone in the district addressed this white man as Captain. People later found out that he was a white Jamaican from the parish of Clarendon, and that his name was Norval St. Clair Marley.
His name is Norval. I met him right there in 9 Mile. And then as a white man in the district, always ride his horse and things like that. He and my father becomes good friends.
Along the line, Captain Marley started coming to Cedella's house every day to sit on the veranda, smoking his pipe and having a chat with Cedella's father, and often play with Cedella. She continued to grow, and soon Cedella was 16 and suddenly a young woman filling out with her nature. She was not quite as keen about the sweaty labor in the fields of Smith, but was instead fussing with her appearance, brushing her hair, and checking her reflection often in a looking glass. Captain used to drop by more and more now, for he had recently moved into a nearby house on the hill that he rented. He would stop and talk to Cedella and ask why she didn't come to visit him at his house that night. Sometimes she would say yes, she would visit him, but then she wouldn't go, and the next day when she saw him, he would cut his eyes, glare out of the corner of his eye, at her in the way Jamaicans do when they're vexed. Or he would sulk and not talk to her, making her feel bad about the way she was treating him. One late night she crawled out of her bed, climbed the hill in the pitch darkness, picking her footing by starlight, and paid Captain his midnight visit. She spent most of the night with him, slipping away early in the morning before anyone was awake and sneaking back into her own bed. Nobody in her house knew or saw or suspected. That night with Captain was her first time ever with a man. According to Cedella, after that first time, Captain wasn't satisfied but wanted more and more. He still dropped by to visit Cedella's father, but now he would be sure to take her aside and beg her in a whisper to come to him again. Awaking again in the pitch blackness a few nights later, she sneaked out of her room and climbed the hill in the darkness to Captain's house. Her brother surgeon, who shared the room with her, woke up, found her gone, and started to cry. Mr. O'Meara, aroused by her brother's sobbing, came from his side of the house to find out what had happened. They went from room to room and not finding her, were stumped about where to search next when Enid, her sister who remembered Captain's wink, said, "You know, maybe she could be over Captain's house." At that, Cedella's father and her brother Gibson stormed out into the night and up the darkened hill to pound on Captain's front door. They caught them both fast asleep. Few days later, Cedella's father sent for Captain and her, calling the two of them into his room, telling Captain that he had to be responsible for anything that happened to Cedella because she was underage. Captain agreed he would be responsible. Thanks for watching, and do remember to watch the continuation part of this true life story. Kindly subscribe to this channel, give it a like and post a positive comment in the comment section below, and I'll see you again very soon for another video.
Many thanks for watching Reggae Just Extra with Ras Dennis.